Welcome to another episode of the Wheels and Beyond podcast that you can find anywhere on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, Ben Durham, and today's guest is Gordon Lai from Biktrix. And we have a bunch of questions today, and it might be classified as an interrogation because e-bikes have changed my life for so many reasons and a lot of other people's, and Biktrix is part of that. But you probably know that I'm into e-bikes, so let's just dive in. Gordon, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Well, thanks for hosting me on this podcast, Ben. It gives me chances to talk about information that I normally wouldn't talk about. But let's just get into who I am and what I do at Biktrix. So I'm the head of strategy and the customer experience at Biktrix. So essentially what my day-to-day entails is anything from, the branding of the company, the product of the company, as well as marketing and anything customer facing. So that's primarily what I do. But because I've been in the industry for the past 10 or 11 years, I've worked with multiple different departments throughout my days, and I like to chip in a little bit throughout different departments to try to make things a little smoother on a day-to-day basis.
How did you get stuck with me on that email thread? Ryan threw you over at me, correct?
Absolutely. But because I oversee a lot of the marketing, Ryan was like, hey, there's this guy called Ben. He did this review on our Swift like a while back, and we have this new Swift CVT bike that's coming out, and we should, get him on one and see what he thinks. So that's kind of how I ended up on that email thread with you, Ben.
Awesome. And it's a belt drive, which really interests me. And the CVT, can you, oh man, I'm already deviating from my questions. This happens a lot. The belt drive and CVT combination, do you mind elaborating a little bit why that is so awesome?
Yeah, so we can start with the belt. So the belt drive is amazing because unlike a normal traditional chain setup where you get all the clinks and clanks when you're shifting, sometimes the chain falls off and it might snap while you're riding. With a belt, you don't have to worry about that because it just stays on there. It doesn't really ever fall off. You don't have to service it for minimum 20,000 kilometers. So it's more reliable. It's more quiet. You have less of the dirt and debris coming at your back, and it's just a better system in general. Where the chain does beat it is in terms of efficiency. So you get approximately 30% more efficiency on a chain. But with an e-bike, with a motor, you don't really care that much about efficiency. You'd rather a nicer ride in general. Now, if you want to talk about the CVT, where this is beneficial is on a traditional bike. If you haven't been on a bike for a long time, you might not know what gear to be in. The CVT technology just makes it super easy for you to understand, and it'll also get all the gears in between. So on a traditional bike, you might have 9 gears. You might have 11 teeth on the first gear. You might have 13 teeth on the second gear. And sorry for being diving into the technicalities of it.
Oh, no, it's all good. I hear that a lot of the audience loves all of the nitty gritty, so go all in.
Yeah, so on a traditional bike, you would be missing the teeth in between those two gears. With the CVT technology, you can access all of those gears. So theoretically, you can get more efficiency than a traditional, derailleur cassette.
And you mentioned the 30%, because I have heard that before. So the reduction in efficiency, is that from the belt or the CVT?
That's from the belt.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I did not know about that. So yeah, a lot of different trade-offs or benefits. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits to that.
Well, if you don't have to tune it up every year, there's definitely a big benefit. So
exactly. And then you throw in the e-bike side of things and you're not really caring about that 30% efficiency. So there we go. Okay, back over to Biktrix for a moment. I guess I didn't really introduce that. It's an e-bike brand. But when I say that, I don't actually know how else to say that, because how is Biktrix different from other e-bike brands out there?
Yeah, so to start off, we're Canadian owned, operated, and majority of our staffing is in Canada. We're not just a company that distributes the product and maybe is owned overseas and is more or less a shell company. We actually do support the community. Now, In terms of what Biktrix is, well, we're a company, a direct-to-consumer primarily company that specializes in power, comfort, and customizability. So for a lot of our products, you'll find all those features built in. And I mean, we can just take a second and talk about, comfort and customizability, because I think that's something that is very special for Biktrix and is something that a lot of customers are looking for. There's a lot of things that can contribute to that. And one of the things that we really look into is, having a really nice upward riding position so you don't have to hunch over. I think Ben's familiar with this, but like we have things like A-bars that can bring your riding position a little bit closer. We have an adjustable stem that you can really adjust. Whether you want the upright position or you want to be a little bit more aggressive, that's fine. We also have features such as, a comfortable wide saddle seat that a lot of other companies just don't have. And I think that stems from difference in beliefs between companies. We believe in, putting out product that's going to actually fit the customer's needs and wants. Whereas I think a lot of other companies believe in the good enough model where, the bike fits you, good enough. We only have one size. You like the color, kind of, it's good enough. It's black or white. It performs fine. It gets me up the hill, more or less. Whereas we don't believe in good enough. We want to go beyond that and really fit the customer's needs, whether it's power, comfort, or customizing it for Magura brakes or whatever, components that you might want on a bike.
And I think the reason that this popped up, and I was like just a few days ago, hey, you know what? I kind of want to chat on a podcast, is specifically the fact that like the CVT just came out and we were talking about it mid 2024. And then recently I got back to you. I forgot to get back to you. Anyways. And then you're like, hey, there's another model coming out because we've heard feedback from our customers and we wanted to improve the bike. So now you have another iteration already on the way. And I'm like, hold up, wait a second, what? So that is different from, as you were phrasing, like a lot of the other companies right now that, well, we'll get into the hardships that they might be facing right now because there's shell companies that just put their label on a bike from overseas. Not to say that everything is mostly overseas, I think, and we can get into that, but you're different in that the owner of Biktrix right now, at the top of this conversation, or right before we started recording, you mentioned he's over in China right now. Can I reveal that? And or was that off limits?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. And what is he doing right now there?
So he's in the midst of doing a factory tour. We usually work with anywhere from 6 to 10 factories. So several times a year, what Roshan will do is he'll go to the factories to kind of make sure that things are getting done, and especially with the QC part, we want to make sure that all our protocols are followed, especially because it's right after Chinese New Year's. You kind of get to see exactly what's going on with the factories. So right now is a great time to kind of take a look at all the factories, get in any purchase orders if we're missing any, and finalizing everything that needs to be finalized for the year.
And can we dive into that difference, the shell company side of thing? I don't know. Is that the right term, shell company? Either way, like it's sticking your brand on something.
Sure.
So iGo wasn't that. And I don't know if I wanted to bring up other brands in
That's
this,
okay.
but now I am.
iGo has been in the industry for a long time, and it was very unfortunate to see that they went bankrupt. I think it was in December or November or something like that. But yeah, iGo...
and they were out of Montreal, right? I think
they're out of Montreal. They weren't like a shell company. They had staff here. They did a lot of design, which actually back in... I think back in 2019 is when they came up with their latest kind of product lineup revamp. Like they did a great job in terms of design back in those days. And it's just really unfortunate that, business is tough. And if you go down the wrong path, yeah, it gets very tough to kind of survive. And I'm just happy that at Biktrix, we've made good decisions and we've gotten lucky a lot of times, and we haven't had to go down the big box path that iGo was forced down to.
And for clarification here, they went with, as a vendor, I forget how that works. They became a vendor of Costco, and Costco's...
It wasn't only Costco, Ben.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so someone might correct me, but to my knowledge, Igo had a sister company called Quest, and Quest was sold through London Drugs. So it was both London Drugs and Costco.
Interesting. So then you are at the mercy of those companies, pretty much, is what I'm kind of gathering without a lot of information. Haven't done a deep
so
dive.
their return policies are very lenient, and I've talked to other companies where the return rate of any Costco product is anywhere from 30 to 40%. And so if you're considering, most companies might not make that after everything's said and done. It's very difficult to stay in that environment where you're expecting 30 to 40% returns after a certain period of time.
Wow. And none of that falls on, probably a very small portion of that loss of revenue falls on, let's say, London Drugs or Costco. A lot of that falls on, hey, Igo, deal with it. Like, here's your 2,000 bikes. I saw some stuff online. It's like a warehouse full of like 2,000 bikes. Then how do you handle that? Because, well, where are the keys for each bike for the battery? Yes, there might be some similar keying, blah, blah, blah. That already is a nightmare. There's 2,000 bikes in a warehouse stacked up. How do you handle that? You can't just resell them. And if you were to, and if you weren't already bankrupt and you're trying to recover some of the costs, it's like, okay, now you're going to cannibalize your fresh sales with used market, like flood the market with, anyways, there's so many complications. Like, that's just a write-off at that point. But then it's like, well, now you have the bikes that, anyways, without knowing all the details, that's just what I'm gathering from that. Okay, so enough about that. Sorry for
we were
going to
talk about the companies that people might be purchasing from like a shell company or something like that.
And then how does Biktrix differ? And yes, thanks for keeping me on track.
No problem. Well, at Biktrix, how we're different is we operate a lot of different showrooms within Canada. So this isn't just like a warehouse that's fulfilled by a third party with a nice website and marketed to you and you buy at a terrific price. No, I mean, we actually work with independent bike shops as well. And we have staff. I think last time my calendar was 49 members on the Biktrix team. And so supporting us, we're here for the long term. So if something happens, we're here to really support the customer. And Ben, we've been around for the past 10 years and we're not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. So, but for us, Biktrix is really about building that relationship with the consumer directly. And so you were wondering about how we were able to get iterations out so fast. And I'll jump a little bit forward, I guess, but a lot of it has to do with our feedback loop. So the traditional bike model is you would have the brand. So let's just say it could be any large brand like Specialized, Trek, Giant, whatever it might be. They would then go through a distributor. The distributor goes through the bike shop. The bike shop goes to the customer. And in between, if a customer says, hey, my bike has this issue, the customer would go to the dealer. The dealer would then say, hey, my bike's broken down. Can you please find out what the issue is for me to the manufacturer? The manufacturer will say, no problem. Let me figure it out. After a week, they send you a controller or they send you whatever part that needs to be replaced. And in between, there's just too many steps and it makes iteration and collecting feedback very difficult. Whereas for us, because we have 4 different showroom locations right now, mostly in Western Canada, but we get that feedback direct from our staff. And our staff knows exactly who to contact inside our team to facilitate anything. And usually if there's a problem that we need to inspect with our R&D team, we automatically kind of just airship it, figure out what the problem is, and we can get a fix on it, within the week.
That clears things up. Yeah, so like even with the shops, you'd have to have the shop contact the manufacturer, and sometimes that's a stretch depending on if the employee does that, etc. Because sometimes the complaint or the feedback falls on deaf ears and it might not get up the ladder there. So,
yeah.
Okay, so with all of the tariff talk, we have to dive into that. Would you mind sharing a little bit on how much of your product ships elsewhere? So like to the USA or to Canada or elsewhere?
Yeah.
What percentage is there?
So in terms of Canada, it's about 60% of our business. with the other 40 being, across the world, mostly to the United States. And I'll actually share a photo with you, Ben. We have this nice photo of where all our bikes have shipped to at our showroom. And so you can just see exactly where there's some like pins in St. Kitts, there's some pins in Australia, in Germany, you name it, so
I'll put that in the video portion of this.
Yeah, but the majority of our business is in Canada. Yeah, so any tariff talk, even though majority of our business is in Canada, is going to be, devastating for the business, just because, it just means that we need to adjust and pivot, but we should be okay.
So for Canadians who want to shop Canadian, you are fully Canadian, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So yay, there we go. I think that is a huge plus because a lot of Canadians are like, hey, you know what? I want to find some local Canadian products. And so this is an example of that. So
yeah,
yay.
we're Canadian owned. A lot of our assembly happens in Saskatoon as well, because that's where our headquarters are. We also do support the community. For example, when we get our bikes powder coated, like a lot of people want custom colors and we get it powder coated, we actually use a local son and father kind of combo that owns their own powder coating business. And so the powder coating fee that customer might pay goes directly to, a local Saskatoon-based business. And furthermore, last year, we had our staff vote on 20 charities that we wanted to donate to. So last year, we donated to 20 charities that benefited from it locally. So this is as Canadian as it'll get.
That's awesome. So, okay, things are assembled here. They are manufactured overseas. And one of my questions here was about the order size. So with those iterations, when you have, let's say, way back, I forget, okay, in 2024, some month in there, you announced the CVT, the Swift belt drive CVT. And how many would get shipped? How many shipping containers would get over here? And then because you know that another iteration down the road will come, you don't want to order too many, you don't want to order too few, because things take time to get manufactured and then shipped and then fulfilled, etc. How does that all work, like for the order size?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we order in batches of 1 or 2 containers at a time. Each container, depending on the box size, because if a box is 3 inches wider, it might only fit 120 bikes. Whereas if it's more narrow, it can fit anywhere from 140 to 160 bikes. And I'll just give you in terms of context on like another bike that came in last year. So one of the new bikes that we introduced last year, I think it was in June or July, it was the Juggernaut Lite, which is an entry-level kind of bike that will get first-time e-bikers on the bike. So that bike's going on a buy one, get one free sale right now. So it's fantastic value.
Promotional.
Yes, go to biktrix.ca. Anyways, so for that bike, we did 7 batches within I guess it was only 6 months. Essentially, after the first batch, we take the feedback of whatever our customers are telling us and we kind of implement it. And that is usually done very fast just because of the feedback loop that I was telling you about. And so similarly for the Swift CVT that we had, there was some feedback that we collected, and the iterations usually are incremental. None of it's usually huge, but it is something that we're constantly working on and just making the product better.
Okay, so here we have, and moving on to the next list of questions. We're like midway through here. You kind of actually already hinted on this about the diversity of the products. You have a lot of different products. How do you manage that? So instead of streamlining and saying, hey, we will offer this one bike and hopefully it fits everyone. And for those who it doesn't, go find another company. And guess what? You're the other company that has all these different sizes and all these different types, like fat bikes and cargo bikes and upright bikes. And well, actually the Swift is both a step-through and not. So yeah, anyways, there's a lot. How do you manage that much diversity of product?
Well, that's a good question. a lot of the product lineup that you see today was built out throughout the years. So I think when we started in 2013, we were one of the first companies that really came out with a fat bike. And so obviously through fat bikes selling through the years, you'll have customers asking for, hey, like this is too aggressive. Like I don't want to hunch over. So then we came up with a bike that was a little bit less upright, more upright and more comfortable. And so that's how we came up with the Stunner lineup, which was the Stunner X, which was, mid-drive, fat tires, but more of a cruiser. And so you see a lot of the evolution of the products through the feedback that we get from customers. And it's not only that we collect feedback from the showrooms, because at first we really only had one showroom, right? But what really sets Biktrix apart and how we collect this feedback is because of how connected we are with the community. Not often do you see a CEO or senior management on the Facebook owners group, and he's able to really connect with the customers and know what the customer wants. So having the diversification of the product has really evolved by knowing what the customer wants and iterating and really testing the boundaries of what we can make it on a bike.
I have to say that seeing Roshan on the Facebook group is really, I would say, sometimes comical in a good way, because people will be like, oh, like there's this problem. And then he comes along, he's like, well, have you contacted customer service and have you just complained on here and this and that? Or have you actually tried to solve the problem? Sometimes it's justified. Sometimes there are annoyances with products. That's fine. But guess what? He's actually there. Like you and I are not just saying this. He shows up in the comments and it's pretty cool. Like you said, you don't often see like senior management or the owner of a company like commenting on like, how does he have time? I think right before we started recording as well, you were like, how does he do all of this? Like what? He's everywhere all the time.
He's got superpowers and I don't know how he does it, but like there was a recent post by our customer, Chris Howard. I actually met him in Edmonton when the showroom first opened there, but he listed out all his reasons on why he chose Biktrix. Obviously, there was the Canadian owned and operated. There was the first class support. There was the customizations that were provided with him. But most importantly of all, he was mentioning how what other company do you see that has the CEO of the company comment on something super mundane or like, hey, like, what is this screw? Like you just don't see that anywhere. So I think that's definitely what makes Biktrix special in terms of the customer experience, and customers are noticing that. And it's super cool to get insight from someone that owns the company.
And he's there. So like, yeah, he's in China right now going over the factory stuff. He knows absolutely everything. So you mentioned, hey, what's this screw? It's like, oh, don't worry. That's model XYZ ABC on probably serial number. It's like, whoa, what? Oh yeah, I saw that one had a nick and we had double, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, that's funny. So learning about that, seeing it in action, it's a thing.
But Ben, before we move on from the diversification of the product, like it's not only bikes that Biktrix is doing, right? Like Biktrix was always meant to be a family of companies that support each other. And so the structure that I normally kind of explain it is a company like Trek, which is one of the biggest bike manufacturers in the world. They have a family of companies. So they have Trek, which is the main brand. So Trek and Biktrix. And then they have their sister company that also does bikes, which is Electra, that does primarily cruiser bikes. So at Biktrix, we're diversifying. So we have another company called BTX Moto, which is more of like a dirt bike, electric dirt bike kind of style. And then we have our accessory company, which is akin to Bontrager, which is Rugged Ride. And so we have products that we developed in-house here, like the Armageddon lights that a lot of our customers really like. And we recently released a new bell called the Rugged Ride all-metal bell. And so we're using this as a platform to have other companies that can support the cycling experience.
Okay, this was not on the agenda. I like it. Okay, I have to put this out there. I have to ask this question. With the motos, we are considering in the coming years, just for work reasons, etc., potentially getting like a 50 to 150 cc like moped style bike. No pedals, actually licensed, need a license, all of that. These are purely off-road, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I can stop asking my question now. But I'm like, oh, these would be tempting to have as street legal. But I think that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of, I don't think DOT is a thing here in Canada, but the Department of Transportation probably has very strict standards. So a different whole ball game. Yep. Because I'm just looking at this on the site right now with the moto. I'm like, that's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing segment, and the competition is fierce, but I think we have a really good product on hand right now.
And when you mention, so going from like the entire motorcycle style, like motorbike over to the bell, when you introduce a bell, how does that, like what's the unique value there in that bell?
Bells obviously are something that's been on bicycles for the longest time, but there's a lot of cheap bells out there. There's a lot of cheap bells that don't sound good, that don't look good. And so for this one, we specifically made it, all out of metal. And instead of, a lot of them have like the plastic clip that goes on the a bar, and they just break. So we really wanted to make, my
doggo is joining you.
Yeah. So we specifically wanted to make something that not only sounded great, so it has 85 decibels, and looked great. So it blends in with your bike, and it's not something that just looks like an afterthought.
I like that. I think anyone who has biked for a while has broken them off. Ooh, okay. For the spring mechanism, I haven't actually checked out this bell, but okay, I should go
I'll
check
send
it
you
out.
a bell, Ben.
Okay. Awesome. With that bell, with the spring, the doohickey that's like usually plastic and it hits the bell, that comes off, or the spring breaks, and then the whole bell is garbage. Yeah, I would love them to not break. I would like it to be a long time on my bike, rather than just like falling off. One tiny piece breaks, then it's not repairable, and it's like, oh, dang it. Yeah. Which has happened to a lot of people probably. So for customers looking for e-bikes, or looking for new e-bikes, or looking for a brand, when you think of, I'm going to go off on a 30-second tangent about cameras or other ecosystems, or Apple or Android or PC or Mac, blah, 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 all that. Usually you pick a side, then you stick with it because the ecosystem kind of fits. And when you choose an e-bike, I've never said this before, I'm just thinking of this on the spot, but like when you choose an e-bike, or you choose an e-bike brand, you want to know that there's going to be customer support around, and you don't want to be left with a thing that has, just like I mentioned with the bell, but with an e-bike, if a cable breaks, or if something super small breaks, or like something like the controller breaks, and then you're left without any support, the whole bike is gone. It no longer functions. Like, you could theoretically bike it like a normal bike. It's not exactly recommended. There's a lot of extra weight, which is totally fine when you have all of the electrical working. And we haven't had any problems like that. But knowing that the support is going to be there is key in the ecosystem and Roshan.
Yeah. It's funny how you brought up the ecosystem kind of thing, where, once you get into one ecosystem, it's very hard to leave. Like, for example, an Apple product versus an Android product. And there's actually, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's actually something similar that's been going on in the e-bike industry that's akin to that. So what I mean by that is there is the North American bikes versus the European bikes, in which European bikes are only allowed 250 watts, no throttle, and there's a lot more regulations on it. Versus for North America, in Canada specifically, we're allowed 500 watts. In America, you're allowed 750 watts. So with the throttle, right? And so even in North America, there's a huge debate between that. And a lot of customers that, if their first purchase is a bike with, more wattage with the throttle, it's very hard for them to go and buy a European spec bike that's only 250 watts. It sometimes won't even make it up the hill. And most importantly, it doesn't have the throttle or the comfort features that really suits this market. So it's funny how you bring up the ecosystem in that end. But like for end consumers, like it's more important than ever to really do the research on the company that you're buying for. Like I actually made like a list of companies that are, you know, owned and operating in Canada, that are assembled in Canada, and companies that are, you know, mostly distributing in Canada, but from, you know, other locations, you know, US, China, Taiwan. So I can share that list with you, Ben. I think it'll be fun. But it's important to really know the company that you're dealing with and whether or not you'll get support, you know, whether it's 5 years down the line or maybe even tomorrow.
Yeah, I have seen over on like the r/ebikes, etc. Sometimes something gets not nicked, but like in shipping, things happen sometimes. So the forks are like, actually, I guess that's you have the quality control, the QC. So forks won't be put on backwards, etc. I have seen that over on the interwebs where like, not to call out a specific brand, but sometimes, no, I won't. Okay. Some other companies that are more discount have things show up very wrong. We'll go with.
Yeah, and not only that, Ben, like there's companies that kind of just slap their logo on the bikes, but like at Biktrix we have like an R&D team of like 10 that are just engineers, and they like the real benefit of working with a company that has an R&D team, and I think like customers can do a lot of research in terms of like which companies have the R&D teams, but the real big benefit is if there's a problem. Let's just take an example. And I'll actually give you like a real example that we went through. One of the pain points that customers were having was they wanted a stronger headlight, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem with a lot of the Bafang systems was that they only outputted a certain amount of voltage. So you couldn't get the super high-end lights from that you would find on European bikes, like Supernova lights. They only work with Bosch systems or like super high-end systems. Now, something as simple as a light, we could say, sorry, we can't give you a better light. Or we can say, let's just, you know, put it onto the drawing board and see how we can, you know, make it work. And so for us, when we went to Bafang, the motor manufacturer, and said, hey, we need this connector to work with higher voltage light. They said, you know, we can do it, no problem, but it's going to be the next iteration of the motor. But that next iteration actually didn't come out until like 6 years later. So because we had our R&D team, we, you know, put it to the drawing board, and then we developed this Armageddon light that's compatible with, you know, most systems. And it's just something that's a benefit because we can make it work with our own in-house team.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious on how they made it work. So you're saying that Armageddon light works with the previous generation, or was it the new one or a different motor?
Yeah, we actually sell like a plug and play kit that you know, anyone with the Bafang system can use.
Engineering magic, essentially. Oh, that's what engineers are wizards and witresses.
Yeah.
Witresses?
But
I can't.
But yeah,
words.
that's all to say that like usually there is a solution to most problems. But if you're just relaying that information to your factory, there's a few, you know, things that they might say. They might say, no, it's not possible. Yes, it's possible, but it's going to take like years to implement. Or 3, they might go with the cheapest alternative and say, hey, is this good enough for you? And that brings us all the way back to the very beginning where I was talking about the good enough model, which we don't believe in.
This is all coming around. Well, good, because we are kind of wrapping up. I think I touched on it and then I sidebarred myself there. But for customers who are in the market for, we got into ecosystem stuff, but
yes,
for customers in general, what is your advice, especially now with like tariffs and just going into the future with potentially higher gas prices, et cetera? That's always on like the horizon. They come back down, they go back up, blah, 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 et cetera. But what is your advice? Do you have any special advice?
my advice is to make a purchase now if you're looking for an e-bike. And we touched up on it a little bit earlier with the IGO conversation, where a lot of companies that didn't have their supply chain right or didn't have the right models are still selling those models today. And I think this year might be the last year in terms of companies fixing that inventory issue that they might have and selling off their 3 or 4 year old bikes. So if you're looking for an e-bike, it's not going to get cheaper than right now for the specs that you're getting. So if you're looking for an e-bike, you should probably pull the trigger now and capitalize on the potential savings that you would have. But the important part is to recognize where you're buying from. If you're buying from a big box store, that's a red flag that the business might be struggling. Whereas if you're buying from an established brand that is selling through bike shops or their own independent stores, then I would say there's no better time to buy than now.
That is so interesting that is a red flag, because I always, so my dad has an iGo bike, and we of course got that, and we didn't get it from Costco, but we had seen it in stores. I'm like, oh wow, they must be doing well, seeing as they're in Costco, and I just saw that as a good sign. And here you're saying maybe a last ditch effort to save the company, etc. And here we are with a bankrupt company with iGo.
Don't get me wrong. There are some good bikes in the Costco kind of big box segment. But the thing is, most vendors are pricing that bike considering that return rate, right? So if instead of if they normally would sell for $1,000, they're just going to market 30% higher. So the product that you're actually getting might be 30%, cheaper. It might not be the motor, it might not be the controller, it might not be the display, but everything that holds it together might be 30% cheaper.
The duct tape.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, usually it's a means to kind of expunge inventory if you're looking at it that way. But there are still good companies like Envo, for example, that sells through Costco.
Okay. And then I did want to go back just to your mention of the 250 versus 500 versus 750 watt. That's nominal, not peak, correct? And that's kind of how you can get away with it. And I kind of have it's weird. There's a lot of stuff going on in Europe right now with police cracking down on overpowered e-bikes, etc. And it's a very small percentage, I would say, with anecdotally, and maybe my belief in humankind. But I think some people, they put on a 2,000 watt direct drive hub motor on the front and back of their really cheap bicycle. Dangerous, 1. 2, very illegal. And 3, most people aren't doing that. And then they go 100 kilometers an hour. And they're like, why did I get pulled over? Because don't do that. That's however, the 250 watt limit, no throttle, etc. It almost seems like an automotive lobby conspiracy theory where it's hey, here's a viable way of getting around. And you were mentioning 750 in the US. I debatably feel like that would be nice in Canada as well, because our distances, you want to be at your top speed that you're allowed for longer periods of time and be able to go up hills at those same speeds because you're trying to replace a car, let's say, or at least go car light. And I like that. We have a 250 watt cargo bike, and it does work really well. It's in the garage, and we also have the Biktrix, and those are at, what is it? Is that one?
That one's 500 watts. I think it's the Swift, right?
Yes. Yep. 500, and it is brilliant. But that's the geared hub motor, I believe, and then the other, the 250 watt is
it's probably like a Bosch, right? The Bosch 250 watt. Yeah. Those are tremendous, and definitely the European market loves those bikes. Yeah, 250 watts, 500 watts. I think it would be nice if the government was able to kind of update those policies, because I think those policies came in place quite a while ago and could need some updating, not only in the Canadian side but also in the American side, because the 750 watts was to be 1 horsepower, and oftentimes, like, humans can output quite a bit of wattage themselves. So if I had any word for the regulators, I would hope that they base off of speed limit rather than wattage, similar to how cars do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the difference, there's a whole long argument, multiple topics on this, but you can buy a Lamborghini or lease it, like most people. Most people don't actually buy those things. That's just silly. You can get one. They can go fast. But here they are going through a school zone with speed bumps, etc. Like there are legal limits, and I don't necessarily like. And this is my thought, not your thought, not reflecting you. No disparaging company, people. But no, like putting those limits in place. I'm not sure. Like they have the speedometers. Sometimes being able to hit 40 kilometers an hour going downhill or something, that's not that hard. Like it's a hill. You're not even pedaling
hard
at
at
that
all.
point.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, oh no, technically I'm illegal right now. I have hit 50 going down a particularly big hill. At that point, I was applying brakes. I'm like, that's dangerous. So, but like on flat ground and on a country road, it would be awesome to be able to go slightly faster. Because guess what? Everyone always goes 10 over when you're driving. So why is it so different when you're biking? And I have an answer: is it's not licensed. So maybe there's that. I would love an option to license and say, hey, my bike theoretically can go faster. So can I be liable? Like, can I do that? But yeah, anyways, they're very strict, but they're less strict with motor vehicles, which I find weird. I kind of get it, but it's definitely a developing. Even as I'm saying this, there's so many different like little gray areas. There's like, as you said, like the 750. It's like, well, some people can put that out, so why is that a limit, etc. And it's down to speed, which is the 32 kilometers an hour typically.
But most road bikes can get there anyways, the 32 kilometers an hour. So yeah, I think a lot of it is a little bit arbitrary right now. And like, as much as I would love more, kind of regulations, I think the regulations just need to make sense. And maybe it's not a blanket kind of thing that applies to all e-bikes, right? Because, yeah, I don't know how one size fits all kind of situation can work. And I know in the US, they kind of divide it into 3 separate categories, which is class 1, class 2, class 3, which seems to be a little bit better. But there's still, some heavy limitations in terms of that. But yeah, like you were mentioning, going down a hill, 50 kilometers, no problem. And I had that experience when I was testing a bike in Taiwan. But the brakes weren't working properly. And I was going down a mountain at like 60 kilometers an hour. And thankfully, mountain roads, they go up and down. And I was able to slow down. But it was just, pure... there was nothing on the brakes, so
send it. Put your shoes down. You'll need new shoes immediately to do the old BMX stop where you put your feet down. Your soles vanish. Okay, so yeah, that was my little rant at the end there, but I don't have an answer. It is a complex topic. I thought I was going to go in and be like, well, the regulation's there, it makes sense, but maybe like. Anyways, yeah. Maybe a class 4 exists, whereas like just license it. Then you can do whatever you want.
I think there is a class 4.
Oh, I didn't. I was very aware of the class 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But I'm going to look it up right now. Why not?
Yeah,
class 4.
Class 4 e-bikes are high-powered electric bikes that are treated as motor vehicles, not bicycles.
Interesting. So technically that would be like the Moto, like the BTX Moto. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Well, actually, I thought of it as like a licensed thing, but that's technically off-road.
I think the class 4 only applies, I think, in California. Each state kind of has its own different system right now. And what you can get in one state, you might not be able to get in another. Like, for example, certain bikes aren't allowed in New York City, but they are in New York State. So there's just a lot of different nuances towards this industry that is very confusing for the customer. And even though I would like customers to do more research, it's very difficult because then you have to get into the nitty gritty, like what is a mid drive, what is a hub drive. Oh, and within the mid drive, there's the European brands that are only 250 watts. Is that better, more powerful than something that's 500 watts? And then you get into rabbit hole where it's the amount of information that you need to understand to get yourself like a really nice e-bike is so hard. And that's one of the problems that we try to solve at Biktrix whenever you come in is, we try to educate you. We're not geared to sell you any bike, like a traditional bike shop that might sell you the bike that gives them, the biggest commission check. At Biktrix, we don't care, which bike you get, but we want to get you on the right bike.
I approve. And then kind of going back to the value proposition, there's a lot of them, but being able to customize bikes, that's something that, are there other brands? You don't have to name them, but are you like
in Canada? I think we're the only one. And even in the States, and like I can name them, it's okay because they're not our direct competitors.
There we go.
Like there's cruiser options from Electric Bike Company where you can customize a lot of things. But the thing is, they only sell really cruisers. So if you wanted to get, an all-terrain bike, if you wanted to get a mountain bike, you'd have to pretty much go through Biktrix if you wanted customization.
All right. I'm very tempted to ask about the fat bike market because when I think of Biktrix, this is probably one of the final things because we have to wrap up at this point. But with fat bikes, do you find that those are more common over in Saskatoon, etc.? Because it's winter right now, and those are great for winter and when you have unplowed things or trails, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think geography has a huge impact in terms of what bikes we sell. Like starting like when e-bikes mostly first came into the market is pretty much when I got into e-bikes as well. I think it was around 2013, 2012 or so, where e-bikes were not the norm. And there were only a few companies doing it. And most of them were actually fat bikes. So if you want to go all the way back with the history lesson, Saunders came up with the $499 fat bike. And shortly after, Rad came out with their Rad Rover, their very first one. That really opened up the market towards the idea of fat bikes. And the reason on that is e-bikes, a lot of e-bike riders are riders that haven't been on a bicycle in, the past 20 years. And so the idea of having a bike with fat tires was actually kind of nice because you had more comfort, you had more stability, and it just kind of looked, for lack of a better word, pretty badass. So fat tires are still obviously a niche today. But in an area like Saskatoon, where the roads are not great because of the snow and all the sanding and everything, it becomes a lot better to ride a fat bike because you have, these potholes that you have to live through for, half the year, and also the ice and snow that you have to go through. So a fat tire bike really makes sense for an area like Saskatoon or anywhere where there's a long winter. Whereas in an area like Vancouver, where I live, you see a lot more customers gravitate towards something that might be, 2.5 inches, 3 inches. And that's not saying that no one buys fat tires in Vancouver because there's a lot of fat bikes in Vancouver. But the options and considerations that a customer might have might be a little bit different compared to in Saskatoon, where it's -30 right now, probably.
Exactly. No, and I fall into the category of not necessarily desiring a fat bike, but the 2 to 2.5 inch tires are my personal favorite. Thus, why I'm talking about the Swift constantly, because that's kind of like our vibe, and like the upright step-through position. That's kind of the style that fits our lifestyle. And so, no, I wanted to inquire about that. But as you were talking, I have one more thing. Always
It's
one more
okay.
thing.
No problem.
But this is my chance to ask an e-bike company this question. I've thought about this for years, and I only just thought about it now. E-bikes, like, how do you find that e-bikes have opened up given permission to e-bike manufacturers, etc., to explore different frame options? Because one of the reasons that we went with e-bikes, and like I originally had this janky DIY e-bike in so the kit off of eBay, and it was sketch and still rim brakes, so like very reduced capacity, would not recommend. But the reason that we went with not like a Bafang DIY kit on like get a good, like I hear people on the interwebs say, get a good kit online, get your favorite bike that's really high quality, and then you can have that for your life. It's like, okay, but there are no good upright Dutch style step-through bikes in North America to choose from. I would have to import a Dutch bike for as much as it would cost for like getting a nice, properly framed, done up, wow, I'm using great terms here, manufactured frame that has like the battery in the down tube, etc. or etc. What are your thoughts on that? Like you were saying that a lot of the new riders are saying, hey, I can get back on a bicycle. And is it because of the approachable frames? It's a new fun toy, or?
Well, I think a lot of the customers that are just getting on the bikes are oftentimes trying to just get out, because once you reach a certain age, you kind of need to find new hobbies, and one of the easy ways to kind of get your friends out there with you is to go riding, but you find that the hills are too steep, or you might have a ailment that on your leg or your knee, and so having an e-bike just makes it possible, because without the e-bike you require a lot of training before you can really tackle those hills. And so with an e-bike, it really just opens up the different possibilities that you have, and offering a complete solution with a frame that's made specifically for an e-bike, versus converting it and then you not knowing what went wrong. If something went wrong, you don't have a warranty on it, is really important for the customer. And I think nowadays it's come at quite an affordable price versus back in 2015 or something, where the difference was a little bit more substantial. But I think nowadays it's a lot more of a no-brainer to go with a complete system that's already tested, tried and true, that comes with being an e-bike in mind.
I like the I don't know if you fit this in. Tried and true usually is the saying, but tried and true actually works for bicycles.
Yeah, exactly.
The spokes are true.
That wasn't intentional.
Okay, there we go. But it totally works. As we close off,
did that answer your question?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
And there are no other frames that really work when you want a certain style. Like the fat bike frames, there are a few that are like the non, like you can get them out.
It's very difficult. And then the other consideration that you have to make, which I don't think many people make when they're making their own DIY kind of e-bike, is if you have your battery mounted in a different area, the kind of center of gravity of the motor and everything, kind of just the weight distribution is probably going to be towards the rear. Or if it's in the middle, that thing that mounts it together might not be perfect. So having a dual wall aluminum kind of frame design specifically for e-bikes is a lot better, because it that's what it's made for, right? It's to carry the weight of an integrated battery. It's to have the weight distribution of where the motor in mind, and it'll ultimately handle significantly better than something that is more of like a bike first and then e-bike second.
Mm-hmm. I can attest to the e-bike frames maturing and I guess e-bike
come a long way.
manufacturers. Yeah, exactly. Because I remember like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that, which is kind of a long time, but at the same time, not. Like things have really escalated very quickly in the development of these frames and the technology behind them. Because I think it was, the 3 to 4 years ago, I saw this, hey, is this normal on the internet? And it's just a split frame, like at the mid drive, I think it was, like because the welding was actually there was no big welds. It just split like in half while someone was not at high speed, luckily, but it's like, oh, that's not good. It was either bad welding or bad something. Yeah. Engineering. Design.
Nowadays, the average e-bike has come a long way versus back in 2013. You can get a really bad e-bike for like $3,000, and if you want an okay e-bike, it's more like $5,000. Whereas now, in the Canadian market at least, it's come down significantly. Like I think you can get a pretty good e-bike now for $2,000, to plug myself again, you can get two for $28.99. So it's a pretty good deal.
There we go. And what models would that be for?
We have the buy one get one free. I think it's expiring pretty soon. So by the time it comes, it might be out of stock. But if you give me a call, I'll treat you right. The Juggernaut Lite is $28.99 for two. So about $14.50 per bike, which is a phenomenal deal. And then you have the Stunner Lite, which is more of a cruiser, for $25.99, and the Swift Lite, which is our lightest weight kind of commuter bike, for $22.99.
There we go. And this will come out probably after those. So that's totally fine because you guys have been doing this for a long time with various models, correct?
Yeah, for the entry level bikes, really to hammer home getting people on an e-bike, which is the most important part of e-bike adoption, is just getting people on an e-bike.
And with the buy one get one free, it's very nice because then you have someone to bike with. Yay!
Yeah, you should get one too, and then you and your wife can be biking together.
There we go. That's always how it goes.
Not on a cargo bike.
Yeah. Yes. We actually. Oh, okay. The final thing. We have the problem where it's like, wait, if one person goes on the cargo bike on the back, it's very fun, especially for date nights. But then we don't get a workout. And so one is tired, so we end up swapping out. And then we're like, wait, why didn't we both just bike? Yeah.
I think you need to get one of those.
The tandems?
Called? The tandems. Yeah, you got to get the tandem bike, and then you can have a kid at the back as well, and you can have an awesome date night together.
There we go. Have you seen the ones where they have I think it's 8 people on a tandem bike? Just like there's a bunch of, that's product diversification. Coming up next, not verified. You
Coming
guys
out April 1st, by the way.
Yeah, that's a great way to leave it. We should put this episode on April 1st. That's far too long. Not happening. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for chatting with me. And there was some ridiculousness in there, but a lot of actually really brand new insights that I'm glad you were able to fill my brain with. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Ben.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks. And thanks for listening. Bye.